Being Anglo-Saxon was a matter of language and culture, not genetics. A new study by archaeologists of Sydney University and Simon Fraser University in Vancouver provided significant new evidence in answering the question, who are the Anglo-Saxons exactly? New findings based on the study of skeletal remains clearly indicate that the Anglo-Saxons have not been a homogeneous group of people, either migrants or local cultural groups. Professor Keith Dobney at Sydney University has said that the results of the team show that early medieval British Anglo-Saxon kingdoms are strikingly similar to contemporary British people, full of people of different ancestries, who share a common language and culture. The Anglo-Saxon era in England is between the 5th and 11th centuries AD. Early Anglo-Saxon dates to approximately AD 410 to 660, with immigration taking place all but the last 100 years, e 410 to 560 AD. The study of old skulls. The combined work, published in PLOS ONE by Professor Dobney at Sydney University and Dr. Kimberly Plomp and Professor Mark Collard at Vancouver Simon Fraser University, focused on a 3D skull base. The foundation of the human skull has a shape characteristic that can be employed in monitoring relations between human populations similar to ancient ones, the PA study by paleoanthropologists said. Therefore, we obtain 3D data from appropriately dated UK and Denmark skeleton collections and then analyze the information in order to estimate sample ancestry in England. The investigators found that between 2/3 and 3/3 of the early Anglo-Saxon people were of continental European heritage, and between 1/4 and 1/3 were local ancestry. Several hundred years after the original migrants arrived, they discovered that 50% to 70% of the individuals were of local ancestry, while 30% to 50% were of continental Europe ancestors, indicating perhaps a shift in migration rate and/or the use of local culture over time. Professor Collard remarked, "We know from these data that being Anglo-Saxon is more probably a question of language and culture, not of DNA." The Anglo-Saxon controversy. While the migration of Germans from mainland Europe between the 5th and the 7th centuries A. is clearly a feature of the English-Saxon origins, the number of persons resting in England is still contested, as is the nature of their relations with pre-existing people of the British Isles, most of them Romans Celts. The continuing and unresolved argument is whether hordes of European invaders have largely replaced existing British and Roman inhabitants or whether smaller numbers of migrants have been settling down and interacting with the local people, who then swiftly adopt the new English language and culture. The reason for this continued confusion is the apparent contradiction between early texts of history, written sometime after the events that show the numbers of newcomers and the substitution of Roman British people, and some recently recovered biomolecular markers from Anglo-Saxon skeletons, which seem to indicate that there were very few immigrants, says Dobney. Our new data is at the interface of this debate, and indicates that both new arrivals and immigrants were mixing up early Anglo-Saxon society and, rather than wholesale population substitutions, an acculturation process led to Anglo-Saxon language and culture becoming the mainstream of the local people. The reason for this continued confusion is the apparent contradiction between early texts of history, written sometime after the events that show the numbers of newcomers and the substitution of Roman British people, and some recently recovered biomolecular markers from Anglo-Saxon skeletons, which seem to indicate that there were very few immigrants, says Dobney. Our new data is at the interface of this debate, and indicates that both new arrivals and